You are listening to Middle East Monitor Conversations, bringing you lively discussions with prominent voices from the region and beyond, as we delve deeper into issues shaping the Middle East and North Africa, from politics, the culture, and the arts.
Hello and welcome to a conversation with the Middle East Monitor. My name is Naseem Ahmed and I will be your host for today. April 6 marks the 30th anniversary of the start of the Bosnian War. The 3-year brutal conflict led to the horrific genocide of some 10,000 Muslims at the heart of Europe. Genocide, as we have learned over the years through our studies, does not happen in a vacuum. There is a 10-stage process that includes classification, discrimination, dehumanization, and persecution, leading to mass killing of one ethnic group or another. Will we say never again while we say never again about the Holocaust, the Bosnian genocide, the truth is that never again isn't the default setting in the West or anywhere else for that matter. People have to be constantly vigilant to the signs that never again is a permanent reality, to the signs that genocide and ethnic cleansing may rise in a country. With that in mind, I want to discuss global Islamophobia following the recent publication of the OIC's report on anti-Muslim racism with our special guest, Ambassador Rizwan Saeed Sheikh. Rizwan Saeed Sheikh is Pakistan's permanent representative to the Organisation of Islamic Cooperation, better known as the OIC. Before that, he served as the Deputy Chief of Mission at the Embassy of Pakistan in Washington, D.C. for 4 years. He has also served as Joint Secretary at the National Security Division, Islamabad, where Rizwan was primarily engaged in drafting Pakistan's first national security policy. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador Rizwan.
Thank you for having me.
Before we dive into OIC's 14th annual report on Islamophobia, tell us a bit about the work of the institution the OIC has been doing, and the role you have within the OIC. You were at one time also the designated spokesperson for what is the second largest intergovernmental body after the UN, with a permanent delegation to the United Nations and the European Union. So it's a huge organization, huge clout. So tell us a bit about the work regarding Islamophobia and your role within it.
Well, OIC, as you yourself have mentioned, is the second largest international or intergovernmental organization after the United Nations with 57 member states. Since most of these 57 member states are Muslim majority nation states, so OIC is generally regarded and understood or construed as an organization representing the Muslim world, or perhaps one can say that it is the nearest approximation to the pan-Islamic sentiment that has always been there in history as well as in literature. So it was basically formed in 1969 in the aftermath of the Arab-Israeli war with the singular objective to liberate the occupied Palestinian territories. But since then, the organization has come a long way and has gathered a lot in terms of its not only political agenda, but economic, social, cultural matters that it deals with. And Islamophobia, since it is, as we have already discussed, construed as an organization representing Muslim majority nation states, Islamophobia is a subject that is certainly close to the OIC's agenda, has been a regular part of the OIC's agenda for over almost a decade and a half, actually more. And this report of the 14th report of the Islamophobia Observatory that you have just mentioned and we intend to discuss is a continuation of a mandate that basically was consecrated during the 34th session of the OIC Council of Foreign Ministers, which was held in Islamabad in 2007. And after that, Pakistan has recently, as you would know, hosted the 48th session of Council of Foreign Ministers on 22nd and 23rd of March, coinciding with our 75th independence anniversary celebrations as a nation state on the world map. So it is during this period that Islamophobia has been a subject of OIC's attention, has been a subject of OIC's action. I mean, with some recent developments that, of course, perhaps we will touch upon during the course of this session and this engagement with you, it only stands to grow. And OIC, during our chairmanship, at least as Pakistan's permanent representative to OIC, I can safely and confidently mention that it would be foremost on our agenda, and we would want to capitalize on the momentum that the 48th session and the context of the 48th session, with particular reference to the passage of a UNGA resolution on designating Islamophobia Day. 15th March has been designated as Islamophobia Day to be marked and commemorated around the world in memory of the incident in New Zealand, where Muslims were brutally massacred, 50 plus in a mosque. So that is there, and in terms of its different facets and manifestations, Pakistan and the OIC are going to go ahead and highlight not only their perspective on this issue, but also engage the international community in a major way to ensure that not only Islam, but all the religions of the world are respected, because as we have seen in history, and history is an evidence, that religion can be a source of contention to the extent that it has major wars have been caused by religious disputes or religious divergences of opinion. So in the interest of global peace, stability, and security, it is important to squarely address this issue, I would say.
Yes, we will speak a bit about the policy recommendations and some of the details of the report later on. But I want to begin with you just giving us just the trend, the global trend that we should know about. Your report, this year, I interviewed a number of people on Islamophobia, and the focus generally has been either with European states or India. But the OIC report seems to me to be the first global report which looks at Islamophobia on a global scale, with the major trends across the world, European countries, India, and elsewhere. So if you can just give us the major trends that we should look out for when it comes to Islamophobia over recent years, which the OIC report documents.
Well, as we have mentioned and discussed, that the report has been there for a while, and it's been produced annually as a mandated activity to the Council of Foreign Ministers at the OIC at each of its successive sessions over the past 14, 15 years, almost a decade and a half. It looks at Islamophobia as a kind of, there's no agreed definition, but of course there is something that exists in modern world, in contemporary world, as a fear or of Islam or a prejudice against Islam and Muslims manifested in not only media, in politics, in economics, particularly in the region where you are, because most of the Muslims are economic migrants. So there are certain trends which even this report defines and brings out. One trend based on the report's lifespan. It's the 14th, so there have been 13 previous reports. That is significant, is that Islamophobia is a continuing challenge. It continues to pose a challenge to not only regional peace and security and stability in regions of concern or countries of concern, but by extension to the global peace, stability, and security. Another trend that the report tends to define is that Europe, Asia, and North America are particular regions or areas of concern which have been clearly identified in the report on the basis of the facts that have been mentioned in the report, the facts that have been gathered by the observatory, and a compendium has been produced or collated in the report. So it is based on the evidence, the facts that these three regions have been identified as major theaters of concern, and Europe certainly continues to form the most significant theater of concern. I would say, since I was previously associated with this observatory and OIC Secretariat earlier in my professional career, that it continues to consistently form a theater of concern. Then the other trend that is more contemporary in terms of its significance is that Islamophobia certainly accentuated during the COVID-19, and perhaps that is something also that we can discuss. The fourth trend perhaps would be that the instances of discrimination, of course, as we have discussed, accentuated by COVID and other factors, continued to grow with particular reference to the regions of Europe, Asia, and North America. And there are facts that have been reported in this report, because previously when we discussed Islamophobia, the discussion has been around for a while. There was this sort of objection from the other side that this discussion is not based on facts. So over the past 14 years, these facts have been collated and reported by the OIC Observatory. And now we can have a facts-based discussion, and we can point out areas, even persona of concern, and persons of concern can also be determined and perhaps flagged as we go. Then the other trend is the ascendance of far right. For instance, in Europe, that has been there again, persistent for a while. It has manifested itself in a number of European countries, including Netherlands, Denmark, France, others. So these countries have certainly, and the incidents have been duly listed in the report. The sixth trend perhaps would be that symbols of Muslim culture, like the veil, the scarf, have been also associated with and identified as sources of discrimination, even to the extent of legislations that we have seen, to the extent of state support and state sponsorship and patronage that we have seen in France, in India, elsewhere, and particularly in these two countries. So this is also one trend which should certainly be associated with Islamophobia and needs to be squarely addressed. The seventh and the last trend that the report looks at and signifies is a positive trend, that there is a discussion, a discourse, increasing intellectual international discourse on addressing this growing phenomena of Islamophobia, growing intolerance, incitement to hatred, incitement to imminent violence. There has been a work on a strategy and action plan at the level of United Nations. Recently, we saw this 15th March UNGA passage of resolution in commemorating and marking that day as the International gives a due recognition that Islamophobia has always been yearning for as a phenomena in terms of international attention that it needs to get. So these are some of the basic trends that have been identified in the report. And I mean, if you want, we can.
No, we can go into the detail a bit later. But I wanted to, speaking about trends, one of the things the report, neatly highlights is what the report refers to as hotspots, and it names and shames a number of countries. India being number one. I think the UK comes second on the list of hotspots. You have France, Canada, and the US as well. I think anyone reading the report would find it quite odd that China hasn't been mentioned as one of the 5 hotspots of Islamophobia across the world. The report does mention the plight of Uyghur Muslims generally, but I think some people find the fact that China is not on the list of hotspots as concerning, maybe. Why do you think the OIC did not wish to put China as one of the hotspots of Islamophobia? Can you unmute yourself? Sorry, you have to unmute yourself. That's it.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you fine.
Well, you have rightly pointed out that there are hotspots that have been mentioned, and there are countries like France, India, UK, United States, Germany, the occupied Palestinian territories, Sri Lanka, Netherlands, and Australia. Based on the facts collated in the report, these countries have been mentioned as hotspots. There is this mention, but in terms of OIC's engagement with the theaters of concern, China perhaps stands out as an example which the others can and should follow, because there is a whole process of OIC engaging with China that started about 3 years back. Actually, it started earlier, but the more pronounced form has been 3 years back, where there have been delegations of permanent representatives of the OIC visiting China and visiting even the areas of concern like Xinjiang, where it is generally at least portrayed in the media, in the international media, that there is a lot going on in terms of Islamophobia. But through this process that OIC now has with China, there is a positive engagement. And OIC, as an international organization is monitoring the change that is taking place. It is engaging not only on the political count, in terms of the phenomena of Islamophobia or the rights of Muslim minority in China per se, but it is also engaging on economic count, trying to deal with this phenomena at multiple levels. So China, since it stands out as a primary and premier example of positive engagement with the OIC, that is why perhaps there is a difference that should be understood in its true perspective, and is there even for others to perhaps emulate with OIC as an international organization that is representing Muslim majority states and protecting rights of Muslim minorities elsewhere and actually everywhere in the world.
I mean, if I may ask, generally, what has been the Chinese response to the OIC when the OIC raises concerns about Uyghur Muslims? Is that something you could share with us? What has been China's response? Of course, engaged with the OIC, but in terms of the allegations itself, what has been China's response?
Well, you have seen that it is not just the OIC that discusses this issue with China. This issue is part of a whole international discourse, particularly in the media and in the Western media, which has been asking for access to be provided by China. But in terms of the Chinese perspective that they have shared with us, that particular portrayal in the Western media is politicized, is based on political motives. So since motives or consideration, or in terms of a point scoring, but wanting to squarely address the issue with China. So they afforded access upfront to the OIC as an organization, first to the General Secretariat and then to the MEMO.
I'm sorry about the weak connection. Rizwan should be able to return. I think we've lost connection. Just give me a second. I think we can get him back. Just 1 second. Back. We lost you there. Sorry. Can you unmute? Unmute, please. Are you able to unmute? Yes, that's it.
Sorry. We were discussing China when we left.
Yes, that's right. We got disconnected. We were discussing China, and I asked you about what the Chinese response has been.
I was mentioning that China afforded that access to OIC that it has been denying to the rest of the world, perhaps for political reasons, because it saw the merit in OIC's intent for positive engagement. And since then, that
I apologize to the viewers. Ambassador Rizwan is speaking to us from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. So for whatever reason, the signal is quite weak. Shall we? Shall I move on to another question now? I think the Chinese question on China has been answered. I think there are other issues we want to discuss with you.
Please, but sorry about this. I mean, this technology is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that it is Islamophobic, but that's somehow here.
No, I mean, I think it's not in your control. I think it's just a poor connection. That's what it is. You mentioned before about the COVID-19 and its impact on the spike in anti-Muslim racism. And the report goes to great length to expose that and uncover that. So tell us a bit about that. We heard how COVID-19 escalated Islamophobia in India, for example. So tell us a bit about how COVID-19 was a huge contributor in the spike in Islamophobia over recent years.
Well, the report certainly, since it is covering the period from December 2022 to December 2020 to January 2022, a 14-month period in terms of reporting between the two sessions of the Council of Foreign Ministers in phobia.
I think I don't think the signal will improve. Apologies to viewers.
Sorry about that. I don't know at which end this is, but it is somehow being broken again and again. Discussing the last question that
Yeah, so Rizwan, I think what we'll do is we'll end the conversation. The signal is too weak. Maybe once the signal improves, and if you can maybe get to a different connection, we can have this conversation. I apologize to the viewers who tuned in to watch the conversation. There was lots to discuss, but I think we'll have to cancel this for now. Maybe we can have the conversation another time. I thank you for joining us. Apologies again. Goodbye.
This was Middle East Monitor Conversations, brought to you by the Middle East Monitor in London.